golems. Thank you for joining me tonight. This is Paisley Wild, and we are off adventuring into the spaces between. We are being broadcast live on Truth Frequency Radio, iHeartRadio, TuneIn, and TalkStream Live. So we had a great response to last week's show. Nothing like being a rookie at the very beginning to keep you humble, though. Thank you very much for your patience, for the technical issues we had at the very beginning, and just in the positive feedback I had from my very first show. That was just really, really, really awesome. Now, for the record, I do want to make sure that everyone knows that I am not an expert. And I don't want anyone to think that I am an expert or even trying to be. I haven't gone through any training or anything like that. And I am just as much of a novice at being a pagan as the next person. And so I'm on my very own spiritual journey, and I just want you to come along and learn with me. Now, some of the social media circles that I'm a part of, or some of the groups that I'm a part of, there have been a lot of questions that are asked as we try to explore the path of being a pagan. And so some of what I'm going to talk about on the show here is going to be, how to answer those questions. It'll be my personal interpretation, I suppose, of those answers, but it'll be hopefully some answers. Now, I personally am an eclectic pagan, and that means I don't follow any one specific tradition or subscribe to any one particular pantheon, and we'll talk about that more later. But as an eclectic pagan, it really seems to be that intention is really the key to finding the answers that I'm seeking. So in trying to follow my own personal path, I'll be borrowing from other previously established paths and interpreting it for my own purposes. Now, I do believe that the call line is open tonight if I haven't totally mucked it up. So if you would like to call in or share your thoughts or opinions, please give me a call at 213-233-3998. And I'll repeat that again later, and if it's not working quite yet, I'll get it figured out, I promise. So one of the things that we were really discussing in one of our chat groups earlier this week is what is the difference between a familiar and a spirit animal or a totem. And that seems like a really straightforward and short question, but the answer isn't necessarily as simple or direct. And some folks do believe that they are very similar or they're the same thing, but they're really not. So a familiar is often connected to magic, and a magic worker's familiar is often a spiritual aid that's been manifested in some sort of animal form. And now often this form can be associated with a household pet such as a cat or a dog, or one that you feel a real connection with, such as a raven or an owl or an eagle or your parakeet, any of those things, just something that you have an intense spiritual connection with. Now, there's a definite belief that that same spirit or that same familiar is passed down through familial lines, either maternal or paternal or just in the family. And that means that maybe if the spirit has been manifested in your family pet, when one dog ages and passes and crosses that rainbow bridge, and you acquire a new puppy to bring into your home and take the place, not necessarily take the place, but help fill that void of the missing pet, that spirit would then manifest in the new pet also. And I've experienced that just a little bit myself. I have a cat. Her name is Andromeda. We call her Drama. And she's a lovely black calico kitty who is getting quite portly in her middle age. And previously to her, we had a cat by the name of Esmeralda. Now, Ezzy, lovable, drooling, awesome cat that she was, often laid on her back, and we called her Otter Cat because the longer we looked at her, the odder she was. And she would just lay there on her back with her feet kicked up like an otter that you might see on the river and the oceans. And so drama does this very same thing. Now, does this mean she's reincarnated of Ezzy's spirit? Not necessarily, but, she does seem to be quite the family pet and does a lot of the same things. But, as I mentioned, it should be noted, however, that not all familiars do take on the form of a family pet. Historically, and in medieval texts and such, familiars were often described as human-shaped or even monstrous in appearance, and were generally attributed to demons or fairies, and so they weren't considered by most to be a beneficial spirit or assistant. It was there for the negativeness that was attributed to being pagan or being a witch. Now, regardless of the shape, though, they did take a physical form, even that could have been a fairy, for instance, or a brownie or sprite. Now, the familiars do bond with the witch they serve, and they do generally have their own personalities, their own goals, and their own prejudices. And they don't always appear to those that they aren't connected to. But by all accounts, though, most familiars really are real, solid beings that you can reach out and touch. Now, the characteristics of a familiar are often interpreted by the person that's writing about them. So, as you know, history is written by the victor. So, whomever is actually doing the writing is going to color that interpretation of what a familiar is by their own personal experiences or their own prejudices. And this means that if someone feels that paganism or witchcraft is inherently a devil-worshipping thing, of course they're going to think that a familiar really is from the devil. But if they're of open mind and exploring the path or even just willing to think outside of the box a little bit, they're going to see that those familiars are going to be interpreted as beneficial or positive influences. So, as you do your research or your studying, make sure you're paying attention to not just the amount of stuff that you're reading or the authors that you're reading, but their interpretation of the material. Because not everybody is going to write open-mindedly about any particular topic. And so when it comes to familiars or witchcraft or paganism or any one particular pantheon or tradition, those opinions are really that. They're going to be colored by that person's thoughts and their beliefs. But getting back to familiars, so they often do bond with an individual, and that they will often begin that relationship when someone begins their foray or commitment to magic. So if you're just starting out on your path, or you're a new initiate into a particular tradition, you may be given or gifted a familiar at that time. Or the door is just open to that potential that you may have, someone, a familiar attributed to you or bonded to you. And if it is gifted, it could come from your teacher or your priestess or your priest or a parent or even a spirit guide, someone, who feels that you may need that additional help as you're learning more about being a witch or a pagan. Now, occasionally, a familiar can be inherited from the death or incapacitation of a fellow magic user or a family member. So this means that if your great Aunt Sally had a familiar, and when she passes, you suddenly have a brand new cat that you didn't know was going to happen, that may be her familiars passing down to you. So also remember that familiars will either appear gradually in the course of your daily life. It may be a slow process, or they may just suddenly show up when their appearance is going to be least expected. However, it may be the most needed at that time. So this means that if you're going through a particularly trying time with your family or your loved ones or school or just life in general, you may be gifted this familiar to assist you into coping and dealing with the day-to-day life that you're having problems with, or in times of serious crisis. So, often familiars are confused with spirit animals or totem spirits or totem animals, and they are very, very different. The difference is that this a spirit animal or the totem animal, is actually a spirit which is there to help guide or protect a person or family or community, and those characteristics are often attributed to that person or that family. So if you've ever heard the saying that, oh, you're as strong as an ox, or as wise as an owl, or clever as a fox, and those older adages are often related to the spirit animal or the totem working with those people. And the spirit animals are there to guide and protect the person or the family or the lineage or even nation. And they really truly are not specific to any one individual pagan tradition. They show up throughout history in both Native American, North American, South American, Central American, European tribes. Any of those that revered spirit animals, they really are not similar necessarily in their belief patterns. So if you are needing a feature of an animal, for instance, to assist you in your daily life or in your practice, you can actually try to ask that animal for guidance. So if you're having problems remembering certain things, in some traditions there's a catechism to learn, and if you need to help with your memory, for instance, you may be the memory like an elephant, that kind of thing. So but you need to make sure that you're asking that particular animal for guidance. You can give an offering, for instance, those offerings could be something as simple as tobacco or moon water or food or drink of some sort, or they could be, well, just about the sky's the limit there on what that offering could be. Now, when you are honoring an animal as a spirit animal, this is not an act of worship. You're just revering that animal or that energy. Again, similar to a familiar, though, spirit animals may only come into your life when you really, truly need them. You may have one, or you may have more that could stay with you throughout your lifetime, or you may have one that's there all the time, and just as you go through certain trials in your life, you may need an additional guide or additional spirit animal to help you. And they may offer that extra power or wisdom to those folks who specifically communicate or interact with them respectfully and trust the spirit animal. Often you'll hear someone says, oh, if my totem animal, or Monday's totem animal is a sloth, for instance. It's just giving some sort of connection to that spirit world, even to the day-to-day life that most mundanes don't realize they're really doing. Now, some people instinctively know that they actually do have a spirit animal or a totem, but not all. And those folks that do, bless them. That's a really awesome thing that they have. Unfortunately, those that don't know for sure, how do you tell? Well, it's not as simple and straightforward as it could be, but it's not that complicated. So, one way to tell is, do you feel drawn to any specific animal without knowing why? I mean, do you have to stop and pet every dog you see? I mean, seriously, we all know people that have this thing for dogs, and they would bring home every single dog that they meet, and perhaps that is really their spirit animal, or every goat, or every horse, or if these certain animal types appear throughout life, do you always see coyotes? Do you always see eagles or hawks? What is an animal that appears consistently in your daily part of life? Now, it's not necessarily, physically manifesting in your life. It could be through dream work or through meditation, or they could be leaving gifts. If you have asked for something, some guidance or some assistance in following your path, you may be left a feather, and different feather colors denote different things, and to say yes, you're on the right path, or no, you're not, or hey, you need to go back to the drawing board because it's not quite right. So that could be a gift from a spirit animal. Going back to those animals that interest you most, if you go to the zoo, for instance, what animals do you have to go see first? Is it the giraffe? Is it the lion, the tiger, the sharks? What is it that you're really, really drawn to? Another more intrusive way, I suppose, of finding out if you have a totem animal is if you've ever been attacked or bitten by one. Now, I'm not talking about your average dog bite that you've been attacked or something by the dog, but I mean, have you ever been bitten by a snake out in the wild, or attacked by a bear or a lion or something like that? Often that physical marking upon on your body can be a sign that that totem animal or that spirit animal has selected you as one of their own, to be a part of their world, and they are planning on giving you guidance and assistance through your life choices. And that's a really powerful thing to know, that every time you touch yourself or your skin, or you look in the mirror, you can see this physical mark upon your skin of an animal that has selected you as a totem animal. Now, do please remember that you cannot force a spirit animal to choose you. It's not something you can force. It has to be a relationship. And just like any other relationship that you might have with someone, there has to be some give and take on both parts. So, should an animal choose you, it will reveal itself to you when it feels appropriate or when your need is the greatest. And you also have to remember to be respectful and thank them, because it's not something you should take for granted, because that is a very special relationship, whether it's with a spirit animal or with a familiar. Now, there are other types of creatures that are often associated with paganism or being a witch, and those are a little different. You may have heard the word servitor, excuse me. And that would be considered an energy working or a spell, perhaps, where you are combining putting your energy into a working to assist you in doing something later. So it may be a foundation for a spell or a ritual that you need more energy for later, or that you want to do during the new moon, but you need full moon energy. Or vice versa. So that is another thing, I suppose, that may be involved in witchcraft or paganism. A golem is very similar, except for instead of being a ethereal or intangible like a servitor might be, a golem would be a physical representation of that same kind of thing. Often they're developed for a specific task. There's one thing that they need to do: either keep the bad energy out, or bring more good energy to you, or give you more strength or faith or energy or any of those things. So it's, like I said, what's the differences? It sounds like a really easy question, but it's not. It's very complicated, and often there's overlap between what is a spirit animal and what is a familiar. When we're in our daily life, just remember what you speak out into the world. Doesn't matter if you're talking to yourself or someone else, your spirit guide or your spirit animal, your familiar, whatever, is going to actually hear that. So if you're being negative, they're going to hear that negative energy and that negative voice that you're putting out there, and they're going to feel that. And now, most of us don't really want to be in a negative relationship. So remember to take care of not just yourself, but also your relationship that you're trying to develop with your spirit guides. Thanking them, giving them offerings, revering them. They're not an item to worship. And just, honoring and respecting that they are gifting their wisdom, their intelligence, and their energies to you. So we are rapidly approaching the bottom of the hour, which I cannot believe how fast time goes by. Holy cow. In the month of May, looking forward a little bit, is Beltane, which is a really fun festival, and it's often community-based. And if you or an organization that you're affiliated with is having a public Beltane event of some sort that you would like me to talk about on the air, or to notify others, or just say, hey, you should go join these folks, please email me. I would happily put that out there for you. The best email to send me any of that information would be wildpaisley@gmail.com, and that's WILDEP, like Peter, AISLEY @gmail.com. So that's a wild with an E, Paisley @gmail.com. And so if for some reason you can't call in, or you want some additional direction or help when it comes to finding your path, or just needing someone to give you some direction, or if you have a concern, please send me those emails and let me know what your thoughts are. If you want me to address a certain topic in the coming weeks, tell me about it. I want this to be a path or a journey that we are all on together. And I am going to learn as much from you as I hope you guys are going to learn from me. Next week, just so you guys know, I want to plug it a little bit early. We're going to be talking about the calendar a bit, and the different Sabbats that are observed in the pagan tradition. Not just Beltane, but like Samhain and Imlach and all of those, and just what some of the traditions are surrounding those, and how they've bled into the mainstream world, and how so many of those traditions that we as pagans developed, just in the course of our daily lives, are now a part of everyday life that most people don't realize. From the Christmas tree to the Easter egg, to everybody dressing up like ghosts and goblins on Halloween. All of those things originally came from paganism, but they're so mainstream now, and everybody participates. Well, almost everybody. Where did those traditions originate, and what they were supposed to accomplish? And also, we'll talk about, what the different associated gods and goddesses were with those different traditions, and how they came about a little bit. So we'll get into some history, which I think is good for us, because it's hard to know where you're going if you don't know where you've been. And I hope I get some input from you guys as far as that goes, because I really want to see what's going on and what you guys think. And again, like I said, if you have a Beltane festival coming up, I know that we have one here locally in the Pacific Northwest that'll be coming up on May 3rd, and that will be in Medical Lake. And I will be posting information on my YouTube page in the description as to how to find out more information about that particular event. Right now I'm planning on going, so I would love to see you there. So I guess I want to thank you again for joining me. This is Paisley Wild. We're on our journey here in the spaces between.